Eternal Storm vs. the X-Men Part 2 takes place during X-Manhunt Part 4. Cyclops benched. Juggernaut busted. The rest lost and confused. Beast was in position to blow the engine room of Thundercloud when Chuck rolled up behind him like he was about to do something strange. Leading us to today's issue. And Stormcasters are mad as ancient wounds within the Storm fandom are reopened. The issue starts off with the team outside at San Francisco Bay, the former mutant utopia. Temper is making a mess of Cyclops' face while she thaws him out, as Psylocke loses contact with Hank in the control room. Magic questions how Storm got so powerful, while Psylocke laments over Storm's poor judgment in the ordeal. Long story short, Xavier is dying of a brain tumor that's also causing his powers to go awry. He didn't tell Storm any of this, and she can't tell on her own because of her natural psychic resistance. Storm has unknowingly made the situation worse by exposing San Francisco to Xavier's haywire psychic powers. Put a pin in this, it will be relevant later. While the X-Men prepare to try again to take Eternal Storm on, Chuck takes control of Beast to prevent him from finishing his mission, but Kid Omega jumps in and brings an end to Chuck's mind puppetry. The two Omega telepaths have a telepath off, wherein Charles nearly comes out victorious, but Kid Omega conjures up a psychic clone of Charles' evil twin, Cassandra Nova, and puts the kibosh on that. He and Beast then subdue the Professor with help from Magic, who had swiped Magneto's anti-telepathy helmet and stuck it on Hank while the telepaths were duking it out. And now, back to Eternal Storm being an absolute piss goblin while beating the brakes off the X-Men. Marco's helmet had been totaled by Eternal Storm's immortal head smash, but being the unstoppable force that he is, he just gets right back up and dares Eternal Storm to give him more. Eternal Storm turns the cosmic fan up to 100 and nearly blows Juggernaut away. She could rip the flesh from his bones with these winds. But before she can do that, Temper turns the cosmic fan off by adjusting the temperature. She controls that which makes wind, but Eternal Storm controls far more than wind and conjures up some of her iconic lightning blades. Magic tags in and leads a charge on Eternal Storm as the team gets its second wind. No pun intended. But nothing can put a dent in Eternal Storm. Magic's soul sword, Juggernaut's haymakers, Eternal Storm is as tough as she is powerful. The X-Men are now painfully aware of how outclassed they are, and while they don't know who is possessing Storm, they know it's something or someone they can't outgun. So Psylocke plays her trump card and threatens Maggot, who's healing up inside of a cocoon. Eternal Storm may not care about him, but Aurora does. So when Psylocke threatens to kill him, she listens. She holds Storm accountable for her actions and the danger she's brought to everyone's doorstep by siding with Xavier. She accuses Storm of not thinking she can ever be wrong and challenges her to let shame empower her to take back control of her body. It's super effective. Storm returns to normal and orders Psylocke to step away from Maggot. But Psylocke has killed more innocent people than some diseases, so this would be no sweat off her back. The team will leave with Charles, and Psylocke challenges Storm to take it up with her personally, blade to blade, if she has a problem with that. Storm agrees on one condition: Xavier must not go back to Greymalkin prison. A compromise is made, and the X-Men retreat with Chuck in tow. At least they would, if they weren't stopped by X-Factor first. And with the recap out of the way, let's dive into the meat and potatoes of what happened in this issue. Even though this isn't a Storm book, it still served as a crucial chapter in her story, if for no other reason than it gave us a better look at the difference between Eternal Storm and Storm herself. Eternal Storm is an absolute unit, tanking physical and spiritual based attacks. Compare that to Storm in issue number 1, where she got stabbed by a flying tree branch during the Oklahoma City incident. Yes, it was being pushed by a nuclear blast, but nonetheless the point stands. Putting Eternal Storm on the defense was a great choice, because it was another big contrast to how Storm naturally fights. But it was inevitable that she would eventually be overcome, and it happened in the only way it really could. Every time Eternity pulls a Ryzen and yanks control away from Aurora, Thinking he can do whatever he wants, someone reminds him otherwise, whether it be Aurora herself or someone who knows Aurora better than Eternity does. At some point, Storm needs to deal with Eternity for good, before he has her do something she will regret and have to live with forever. And the way it went down was almost perfect. Psylocke knew which cards to play and how to play them. Aurora snapped back to reality,
There goes gravity.
only after Psylocke made her face the potential of having innocent blood on her hands. She was laying it on thick with the whole "you can't imagine being wrong" shtick, but it was an effective part of her strategy. Ironically, this is what some Storm detractors actually think of Storm in the real world. They think she's some holier-than-thou faux goddess who thinks too highly of herself, and can't tell right from wrong cause she's too high on her own farts. Or at the very least see her as a hypocrite who doesn't practice what she preaches. I'm working on a video that addresses this criticism directly, but for now, I'll just remind you that Psylocke has pointed out in numerous occasions how Storm is in the wrong here. She's made the situation worse by giving Xavier sanctuary and endangering all the citizens of San Francisco. Obviously it wasn't intentional, but that doesn't mean she shouldn't bear the responsibility. But like I said, a much beefier video is coming addressing this whole thing, so just keep an eye out for that. And that leads us to the problematic moment of this issue, which really boils down to these panels here, where Temper stops Eternal Storm's wind attack by controlling the temperature. Now, while we pass judgment on these pages, we gotta ask ourselves, does this moment make any sense?
Well, no. And yes.
Temper does control the temperature as she says in the text, but her powers function fundamentally differently than Storm's. She controls the temperature of any given field or object by way of heat transference, which allows her to increase or decrease the temperature of said object or space. But she doesn't create the heat or the cold itself. She merely manipulates what's already present. And it's only limited to temperature. She says Storm only controls weather, while she controls what makes weather, implying that Storm's powers are a component of hers, when in reality it's the other way around. Temperature is one of several elements that influence the weather, which is Storm's domain. That alone should make Temper's strategy null and void. But it gets even deeper than that. Remember, Storm has extrasensory perception of weather and energy patterns, which allow her to visually detect changes in the atmosphere on a macro and micro level. Not only that, but her ability to affect the weather happens faster than conscious thought. It's instinctual and spiritual. So with all these advantages that Storm has, why did Temper's plan work? Was this just another case of an X-Men writer not understanding how Storm's powers work? Possibly. It wouldn't be surprising, nor would it be the last time it's gonna happen. But I think there's a different answer here. And this brings up something that I clocked about Eternal Storm a few weeks ago, something that you all have picked up on in the comments as well. For all of his phenomenal cosmic powers, Eternity really doesn't know what to do with Storm's abilities. Sure, Eternal Storm has shellacked the X-Men in 2 big flashy fight scenes, but it was more style over substance. And that's after issue 5, where Eternal Storm didn't do anything that we haven't seen base level Storm do. We know Storm uses immense atmospheric pressure and can flash freeze numerous opponents at once. Even Anime Storm was doing that. What Eternal Storm does in issue 6 is out of the norm for Storm, but that's not due to a lack of power. Instead, it's a fundamental difference in how she uses her powers. When's the last time you saw Storm fire ice breath like Piccolo or Broly from DBZ? Or fashion lightning into different blades? All of that's just a bunch of showing off and overkill, which go directly against Storm's own moral compass. And this leads to Temper's big gotcha moment. And even though his lack of care has caused Storm's moves to have more blunt force or power, it really hasn't gotten down into the nitty-gritty of what her powers are capable of. He's too busy using said powers to make lightning lances and go full Godzilla on Storm's friends. It's like he just found a stockpile of weapons and is having so much fun with his new guns, he never learns all of their different settings. So Eternity was just caught with his pants down. And that's really what this boils down to. I know we're so used to different teams mishandling Storm and we really have been spoiled lately with the current Storm team. But if Moray's words on social media are any indication, the X-Men writing team was more than willing to work with what he was already setting up and play to his tune. And as he laid out on X, Storm is going to shine more in her own book than when she's guest starring in someone else's book. Just like any other main character in comics, the home team is always going to do your best. But that's just my take on things. What do you think about this? Comment below and let me know, and then click on this video right here to get even more Weather Witch goddessness in your life. And until next time, keep simping.